He stayed late again, long after most of the office lights had gone dark. It was not because anyone asked him to. It was simply easier to finish work when the noise stopped and the meetings ended. During the day, people talked over him or rushed past his desk. At night, the building felt honest. Just rows of desks, quiet screens, and his own thoughts. He packed his bag slowly, shoulders heavy, eyes tired from staring at numbers and emails that never seemed to matter. He had worked for the company for years, yet most people barely knew his name. He was reliable, never late, never loud. Maybe that was the problem. He did his job well, but quietly. And quiet people were easy to forget. Before leaving, he remembered the gym downstairs. The company had built it for employees, but very few used it at night. The idea of going straight home to his small apartment felt lonely. He needed somewhere warm, somewhere silent, somewhere he did not have to pretend. The gym lights were dim, just bright enough to see. A few machines hummed softly, unused. He walked past them and headed straight for the locker room. The air smelled clean, almost empty. As he changed, felt his body relax for the first time all day. He wrapped a towel around his waist and walked toward the sauna. The wooden door looked untouched, no voices, no sound from inside. He paused for a moment, listening. Nothing. He smiled slightly. This was exactly what he needed. Inside, the heat wrapped around him like a blanket. He sat on the bench and leaned back, closing his eyes. His breathing slowed. For a while, he said nothing. He just let the silence sit with him. Then his thoughts began to surface, one by one. At first, they stayed inside his head. But after a few minutes, words slipped out, softly, almost like a whisper. "I work so hard," he said, staring at the floor. "I do everything they ask." His voice sounded strange in the empty space, but it also felt freeing, like letting out air he had been holding for too long. "I stay late. I help others finish their work. I fix mistakes that aren't even mine." He shook his head slowly, but no one notices. He laughed once, a short, tired sound. They remember the loud ones. The ones who talk in meetings. The ones who take credit. The heat made his skin damp, but he did not move. He felt safe here, alone, or so he thought. "I don't want to be famous," he continued. "I don't want praise every day. I just want someone to see me. Just once." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Sometimes I wonder why I even try so hard. Would it matter if I stopped?" The question hung in the air. He did not expect an answer. He never did at work. He often watched others get promoted. People with less experience, less effort. He told himself it was fine, that his time would come. But years passed and nothing changed. "They say be patient," he muttered. "They say hard work pays off." Another small laugh escaped him. When? The sauna felt heavier now, not just from the heat. His chest tightened. He wiped his face with the towel, unsure if the moisture was sweat or something else. "I'm tired," he said quietly. "Not just from work. From pretending I'm okay." He thought about the emails he sent that never got replies. The ideas he shared that were ignored only to be praised later when someone else repeated them. He remembered the way managers nodded politely and moved on. "I don't even need a big role," he went on. "I just want a chance. One real chance." He leaned back again, eyes closed, voice steady but low. "I know I can do more. I know I'm capable." The room stayed silent. The wooden walls absorbed his words, offering no response. He took a deep breath. The heat pressed against his lungs, but it felt honest. Nothing fake here. No smiles to force. "No need to be careful, I guess this is what happens," he said, "when you talk to no one." He sat there for a long moment, listening to the soft crackle of the heater. His mind began to slow. The weight in his chest eased just a little. Just as he was about to stand up, he noticed something. A sound. Not the heater. Not his breathing. A small shift. Wood moving. His eyes opened. He looked toward the corner of the sauna, where shadows rested thicker than the rest of the room. He held his breath and listened. Nothing. He told himself it was his imagination. The heat played tricks on the mind. He exhaled slowly, but then it happened again. A quiet movement. A controlled breath that was not his own. His heart skipped. "Hello?" he asked, his voice suddenly unsure. Silence followed. Long and heavy. He stood up slowly, towel clenched in his hand. His eyes adjusted, and his chest tightened as he realized the truth. He was not alone. Someone else was sitting there, still calm, watching. The moment stretched, thick with tension. His thoughts raced. How long had the other person been there? How much had they heard? He swallowed hard, feeling heat rush to his face, stronger than before. "I thought this place was empty," he said softly. The other figure did not move right away. Then, in a steady and relaxed voice, the person spoke. "It's okay," the voice said. "You can sit. Finish what you were saying." His legs felt weak. He did not sit because something about that voice felt familiar, controlled, confident, important. And in that moment, before he even saw the face clearly, he felt a deep sense of fear. Not because he had spoken badly, but because he had spoken honestly, and someone powerful might have heard every word. The heat made it difficult to think clearly, but he could feel every drop of sweat on his skin. His heart raced as he tried to decide what to do. Should he apologize? Should he leave? Or should he pretend nothing had happened? The figure across the sauna remained calm, unmoving. The silence stretched, broken only by the soft hiss of steam. For a moment, it was almost worse than if the person had spoken. The stillness made him feel exposed. I didn't expect anyone to be here," he said finally, voice trembling slightly. He tried to keep it casual, but every word felt heavy. The other person tilted their head slightly. "I understand," they said. "I didn't mean to startle you. I just heard you talking. And I wanted to listen." He froze. Listened. How could someone just listen to everything he said? Every frustration, every moment of doubt, every tiny thought he had spilled out loud was now out there, vulnerable. "I wasn't thinking anyone would hear," he stammered. "I was just talking to myself." The figure nodded slowly. "It's fine. You can speak freely here. I won't interrupt." His eyes widened. Speak freely? That was something he had never done at work. No one in the office cared to hear him. At meetings, people interrupted him, talked over him, or dismissed his ideas without a thought. But here, in the warmth of the sauna, someone was actually listening. He shifted slightly on the bench, trying to make himself comfortable, though his mind was racing. Should he continue? Should he stop? But the words were already forming in his head, too heavy to hold back. "I feel like I'm invisible," he said finally, his voice quiet but steady. "No matter what I do, it's like no one sees me. I try to help, I try to contribute, but it doesn't matter. No one notices." The figure remained silent, simply listening. That silence encouraged him. He took a deep breath and continued. "I work late. I take on more than my share. I try to fix problems no one else wants to deal with, and it never counts. Sometimes I think maybe I'm just not good enough, or maybe I just don't belong here." His chest tightened, the heat pressing against him. "I want to matter," he whispered. "I want someone to see me as more than just another employee. Just once. Just once, I want someone to really notice the effort I put in." The figure shifted slightly, leaning forward on the bench. He couldn't see the face clearly yet, but there was a subtle, quiet energy. A calmness that was not casual, it was deliberate, controlled. "Keep going," the voice said softly. "I'm listening." The words were simple, but they gave him permission. Permission he had never felt at work or anywhere else. He leaned back, exhaling slowly, and let the words flow. "I hate how meetings go," he said. "I speak up, but it's like I'm invisible. The loud ones get the attention. The ones who take risks, even if they fail, get recognized. I do what I can, quietly. And somehow, that's never enough." He paused, looking down at his hands. They were still trembling slightly. "I've stayed late countless nights. I've worked weekends, fixed problems no one even knew existed. And for what? To be forgotten the next day?" Another long pause. The silence from the other side of the sauna made him uneasy, but in a strange way it was comforting. Someone was really hearing him. "I'm not angry," he said softly, almost to himself. "Not really. I want to be seen. Is that too much?" He swallowed hard, feeling the tension in his chest grow. "Sometimes I wonder if it even matters anymore. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe I'm just here to be useful and then fade away." The figure made a small sound, not a laugh, not a judgment, just a sound of acknowledgement. That alone made him feel less alone. "I'm scared," he admitted. "Not of work, not of failure, but of staying invisible my whole life, of never being noticed, never being understood." His voice wavered, but he kept going. "I try to speak up. I try to share ideas, but it feels like shouting in an empty room. No one cares. No one listens. And the ones who do, they only notice the mistakes, not the effort." He ran a hand over his face, the heat sticking to his skin. "I just want to matter. That's all." "Is that so much to ask?" The figure finally shifted again, leaning forward slightly. "It's not too much to ask," the voice said calmly. "You do matter. And it's okay to want that. It's okay to be frustrated, to be tired, to want to be seen." The words were simple, but they struck something deep inside him. No one had ever said that to him like that before. Not a boss, not a colleague, not a friend. Just one person acknowledging that his feelings were valid. He swallowed, trying to steady his voice. I've been trying so hard for so long, and it feels like it's never enough. I don't know if I'm failing, or if no one cares, or both." Another long pause. The steam hissed softly in the corner of the sauna. It seemed to echo the emptiness he had felt for years. "I'm not complaining," he said finally. I need someone to hear me. Just for a little while." The figure leaned back slightly. "You've been heard," the voice said. "And that matters. Your words matter, even if they aren't always noticed where you expect them to be." He nodded slowly, a lump forming in his throat. For the first time in a long time, he felt a little lighter. He had spoken his truth. He had been honest about his fear, his doubt, his frustration. And someone had listened without judgment. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for listening." The figure nodded again. "Sometimes people need to speak their truth to be seen, and you have been seen tonight." The words felt strange but comforting. He had never been seen like this before. Not at work, not at home, not anywhere else. And now, here in the heat, in the silence, he felt that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. He leaned back, letting the heat surround him. The tension in his chest eased slightly, replaced by a strange sense of hope. The world outside the sauna was still the same, busy, loud, and often unfair, but for this moment, he felt understood. "I don't know what comes next," he admitted. "I don't know if anything will change. But at least I've said it. At least someone heard me." The figure remained quiet, letting him speak. They did not interrupt, did not judge. They simply listened, letting him spill out the thoughts he had kept hidden for years. For a long time, they sat there in silence. Two people in a quiet, hot room, sharing a space that felt safe. He realized that honesty, even in the smallest moments, could be powerful. Even words spoken softly to the air could change something inside him. Finally, he exhaled slowly, feeling a little lighter than before. I think I needed this more than I realized," he said. "I just needed someone to hear me." The figure nodded, a small smile in their voice. "And now you have. Remember that even when the world feels cold or unfair, someone is listening. Someone can hear you." He nodded again, not knowing what to say. The heat pressed around them, but it no longer felt suffocating. It felt like a shield, protecting the honesty that had been shared. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting himself just be. For the first time in years, he felt something shift inside him. Not a solution to all his problems, not a sudden change in life, but a small, important recognition he mattered. Someone had noticed. Someone had listened, and that was enough. For now, to make the night feel lighter, warmer, and a little more bearable. He sat there for a moment, eyes closed, letting the quiet surround him. The warmth of the sauna pressed against his skin, but it no longer felt uncomfortable. Instead, it seemed to hold him gently, like the room itself was listening. He could feel his heart slowing, his racing thoughts settling into a more controlled rhythm. Then finally, he opened his eyes. The figure across from him was still there, calm and composed, and he could make out more details now. The features were sharp, deliberate, almost commanding, the kind of presence that could fill a room without saying a word. A voice that could make people follow instructions, pay attention, or even fear to speak. A presence he had only felt at work from afar, never up close. And now, sitting just a few feet away, the realization hit him. It was his boss. He froze. The towel in his hands tightened around his waist. His mind raced, going back over everything he had just said, the frustration, the doubts, the fears he had spilled aloud. Every single word. All of it had been heard. And now, the person who had the power to influence his career, his reputation, even his livelihood, was sitting across from him. He opened his mouth to apologize, but no words came out. It was too much to process. How could he have been so careless, so open, so vulnerable without even knowing the person in the room? How could he have been speaking truths that no one at work ever cared to hear, and now they had reached the one person he never expected to listen? The boss, for their part, remained quiet, simply observing him. There was no anger, no judgment, just a quiet, steady presence that somehow made it harder and easier to speak at the same time. After a long pause, the boss finally spoke. "I could hear you from the doorway. I wanted to make sure you had space to finish." It takes courage to speak like that. He swallowed hard. Courage. He had never thought of his words as brave. They were just the truth, raw and unfiltered. But to hear it acknowledged that way, from the person he had always feared, made his chest tighten with a mixture of relief and anxiety. "I didn't know anyone was here," he finally managed to say. "I didn't think anyone would hear me." The boss shook their head slightly. "That's why I stayed silent. I wanted to hear you without interruption. And you've said a lot that needed to be heard." He blinked, unsure if he should feel relief or dread. He had expected punishment, perhaps embarrassment, maybe even dismissal. Instead, he was being listened to. Not mocked, not ignored, but truly listened to. It felt strange, almost unbelievable. I didn't mean to, I just needed to speak," he stammered. "I didn't realize someone would actually hear me." The boss leaned forward slightly, eyes calm but intense. "Speaking honestly isn't a crime. In fact, it's rare. Most people hide their true thoughts. Most people try to fit in, to be liked, to avoid standing out. You've done the opposite. You've been honest. And that tells me more about you than anything else ever could." He felt a flush of heat rise to his face, not just from the sauna. He had never been praised for honesty, for courage, for anything. And here, the person with the power to change everything was telling him that his honesty mattered. "I don't know what to say," he admitted. "I didn't mean for anyone to hear me. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. It's exactly why it matters," the boss said gently. "Because it wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about being real. And being real is rare in the world of work. People hide behind words, behind smiles, behind appearances. You let yourself be seen, and that takes strength." He leaned back against the bench, letting the words sink in. For a moment, he felt a weight lift off his shoulders. But it was quickly replaced by another feeling, fear. What did this mean for him? Would he be reprimanded? Would this change the way he was treated? Could he ever go back to pretending nothing had happened? The boss seemed to read his mind. "I'm not here to punish you," they said. "I'm here to understand you, and to help you understand yourself." He looked at them, eyes wide. Help him understand himself? This was the same person who had seemed unapproachable, distant, a figure of authority that inspired compliance and sometimes fear. And now, here in the quiet heat of the sauna, they were talking to him like an equal. Or at least like a person worth listening to. "I don't know how to do that," he admitted. "I've been trying to figure it out for years. I've tried to be patient, to work hard, to wait for recognition, but it never comes. I don't know if I'm doing it wrong, or if I just don't belong." The boss shook their head slowly. Belonging isn't about waiting for recognition. It's about being present, being honest, being consistent. You've done all of that. And you've made the mistake of believing that hard work alone should be noticed. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. That doesn't mean it's worthless. He stared at the wooden wall, taking in the words. They were simple, but they hit him like a wave. Everything he had thought about himself, everything he had doubted, was suddenly seen in a new light. He had been working hard, not for praise, not for recognition, but because it mattered to him. And that was enough to make a difference even if the world didn't notice. I don't know if I understand, he said softly. I feel like I've been invisible for so long, and now I'm not sure what to do with that. It's normal, the boss replied. It takes time to process being seen. Most people never experience it. And when it happens, it can be confusing. But it's also powerful. It can change how you approach everything. Your work, your relationships, even yourself. He leaned back, letting the heat wrap around him, and thought about the years he had spent feeling unnoticed, undervalued, and overlooked. He thought about the countless nights he had worked alone, the ideas he had shared that were ignored, the small victories that went uncelebrated. And now, sitting here, he realized that perhaps the perception of invisibility had been part of his own fear. That maybe, just maybe, someone had always been watching, waiting for the right moment to notice him. I don't know if I've ever felt like this before, he admitted. Not invisible, not ignored, not small. For the first time, I feel seen, and it's scary. The boss nodded. That's normal too. Being seen can be uncomfortable. It exposes you. It forces you to confront yourself, to accept that you matter. But it's also the beginning of something important. You can't go back to being invisible once you've experienced this. And you shouldn't want to. He swallowed, feeling a lump in his throat. The words were heavy, but in a way that felt good. Like they were grounding him, giving him a sense of purpose and clarity he hadn't felt in years. I don't know if I'm ready for that, he admitted. I've spent so long being careful, being quiet, trying not to stand out. Now it feels overwhelming. It's okay, the boss said gently. You don't have to change everything at once. Start small. Notice yourself. Value yourself. Speak when it matters. And remember, you've already shown courage by being honest here tonight. That's more than most people ever do. He nodded slowly, letting the words sink in. The heat of the sauna, the presence of the boss, the honesty of the moment, it all combined to create something he had never experienced. Not fear, not shame, not pressure. Just a strange, quiet sense of possibility. For the first time in a long while, he felt hope. Not the kind of hope that comes from waiting for recognition, but the kind that comes from knowing that his voice, his effort, and his honesty had value, that he mattered, even if the world didn't always see it. He took a deep breath, feeling the heat of the sauna and the weight of the moment. He didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know if his life would change immediately, or if this was just a quiet, private moment that would fade like steam. But he knew one thing. For the first time, he felt seen, and that was enough to make everything else possible. He sat back, still processing everything that had just happened. The realization that the boss had been listening, and that they were not angry, left him in a strange state of shock. He had always imagined this kind of encounter ending badly: humiliation, reprimand, perhaps even punishment. Yet here he was, still alive, still himself, and feeling. Strangely relieved, the boss leaned back on the bench opposite him, the heat making both of them sweat, but it didn't matter. There was a calmness to the room, a rare moment where the world outside the office politics, the deadlines, the expectations seemed to disappear. It was just them, two human beings in a quiet, hot space, sharing a conversation that had been years in the making without either realizing it. You've carried a lot, the boss said quietly, their voice even but filled with a certain warmth. You've been working hard, shouldering responsibilities, and not always being recognized for it. That can take a toll. He nodded slowly, unsure of what to say. The truth was, He had been carrying it for so long that he didn't even remember what it felt like to let it out. He had learned to hide the frustration behind politeness, efficiency, and silence. But now, speaking honestly, had released something he didn't even know was trapped inside him. "I didn't realize anyone noticed," he said finally. "I've been careful to be quiet, to do my job, to not make waves. I thought that was enough. But maybe it wasn't about being quiet. Maybe it was about being invisible." Yeah, the boss nodded again. "You've been careful. Yes, too careful, perhaps. But it's understandable. Most people don't know how to stand out without fear. Most people hide themselves to survive. But that doesn't mean your work hasn't mattered. It doesn't mean your effort hasn't been seen, even if it wasn't acknowledged." He swallowed, letting the words sink in. They were simple, but they carried a weight he had never expected. Simple acknowledgement. That alone felt powerful. He realized that he had been so busy surviving in the office, so focused on being invisible, that he had forgotten how much he deserved to be seen. "I just want to do better," he admitted softly. "I want to contribute. I want my work to matter. I want to be seen, not for praise, but just to know it makes a difference." The boss smiled faintly, a small, approving expression. "And it does make a difference. More than you know. You've been handling difficult tasks, solving problems quietly, helping others succeed. That's leadership in its own way, even if no one has called it that yet." He blinked, surprised. Leadership. Him. He had never thought of himself as someone capable of leading, of making a real impact. He had always measured himself by recognition, by promotions, by acknowledgement from those around him. And here was someone telling him that impact was more than just visibility, that it was about effort, care, and consistency. I never thought about it like that," he murmured. "I've been chasing recognition, and I forgot what really matters." "That's common," the boss said. "People often confuse recognition with value. They believe that if no one applauds, they are failing. But true value is often quiet, steady, unseen. It's about making a difference without needing acknowledgement. That's something you've been doing all along." He nodded slowly, letting the words settle. There was a strange sense of pride growing inside him, subtle but steady. For the first time, he realized that his work had purpose, even if it wasn't always celebrated. And that realization, simple as it was, brought a deep sense of relief. The boss continued, their voice calm and encouraging. "I also want you to know that I see you. I see your effort, your honesty, your dedication, and I want to help you find the right path forward. You've shown courage tonight, speaking openly and honestly. That tells me you're ready for more than you've been allowing yourself to believe." He felt a lump in his throat. The idea that someone in such a position could not only see him, but also want to help him, was almost overwhelming. He had spent so long feeling invisible, so long doubting himself, that the possibility of guidance from someone he respected seemed unreal. "I don't know if I'm ready," he admitted softly. "I've spent so long being careful, so long hiding my thoughts. What if I fail? What if I can't live up to the expectations?" "Failure is part of growth," the boss replied. "Everyone fails. The difference is how you respond. You've been careful because you feared failure, but now you have an opportunity to embrace it differently. To take chances, to step forward, to trust yourself. You're ready, even if you don't feel it yet." He looked down at his hands, sweating and trembling slightly. The reality of the conversation sank in. This wasn't a lecture, a critique, or a warning. It was a recognition, a rare acknowledgement that he mattered, and a gentle push toward growth. He had never felt anything like it before. I've never had anyone say that to me," he admitted quietly. "That I matter, that my work matters, that I can grow. It's new, and it's scary, but also kind of comforting." The boss nodded, their expression serious but warm. "It should be comforting. You've spent so long hiding from the world, trying to survive. Now you can start stepping into it. Carefully, steadily, but with honesty. That's how real change happens." He leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of the sauna and the calm presence of the boss surround him. He thought about the years he had spent struggling, working hard, feeling unseen. And now, in this quiet, unexpected encounter, he felt something shift. He felt seen, heard, validated. "Thank you," he said softly, "for listening, for understanding, for being here." The boss smiled faintly. "Sometimes people need to speak their truth to be seen. You've done that tonight. And now you have a choice. You can continue to hide, or you can step forward, slowly, and trust yourself. I believe you're ready for that step." He nodded slowly, feeling a small but steady spark of hope inside him. For the first time in years, he believed that he could make a difference, not just in his work, but in himself. That honesty, courage, and effort could be enough, even without constant recognition. That someone had seen him, understood him, and believed in his potential. He sat in silence for a few moments, letting the weight of the conversation settle. The steam hissed softly, the wooden walls absorbed the warmth, and the world outside seemed distant and unimportant. For now, it was just him and the boss, two human beings in a quiet space, sharing a rare moment of understanding. "I think I understand," he said finally. "I need to trust myself. I need to believe in my work, in my effort, and in my honesty. I need to step forward, even if it's just a little at a time." The boss nodded. "Exactly. One step at a time. You've already taken the hardest step tonight, speaking honestly, being seen. Everything else is easier from here." He exhaled slowly, feeling lighter, calmer, and more determined. The fear and anxiety that had haunted him for years were still there, but they were tempered by something new: recognition, understanding, and a quiet sense of hope. For the first time, he felt ready to face the world differently, not as someone invisible, but as someone who mattered. He left the sauna that night feeling different, though he couldn't yet put a name to it. The heat still lingered on his skin, the echo of their conversation in his mind. It was strange to feel calm and energized at the same time, as if a weight had been lifted while a spark had been lit. Over the next few days at work, he noticed small changes in himself. He walked a little taller, spoke a little louder in meetings, and approached tasks with a quiet confidence he hadn't felt before. It wasn't dramatic, but the difference was noticeable to him. He no longer felt invisible in the same way. He felt seen, and that knowledge, even private, gave him courage. He also noticed changes in how he approached colleagues. He listened more openly, offered suggestions without fear, and allowed himself to share ideas he had previously kept hidden. And for the first time, he realized that sharing his thoughts didn't make him weak, it made him stronger. And others began to respond. One afternoon, he was called into the boss's office. His heart thumped, a little anxiety returning. But it was different now. This time, he was ready to face the conversation. The boss smiled as he entered. "Sit down," they said. "I wanted to check in on you after our talk in the sauna. How are you feeling?" He took a deep breath and sat, meeting their gaze. "I feel different. I'm noticing things I didn't before, and I'm trying to step forward, even if it's just a little. I'm trying to trust myself." The boss nodded, pleased. "That's good to hear. It's not easy to change perspective overnight, but the first step is acknowledging your own value. And it seems you're doing that." Over the following weeks, small but meaningful changes began to happen at work. He was given opportunities to lead small projects. His ideas were noticed and discussed, and for the first time he felt that his contributions mattered. The recognition wasn't loud or public, but it was consistent and sincere. And that mattered more than he had imagined. He continued to think about the sauna that night, the conversation with the boss and the honesty they had shared. He realized that moment had been a turning point, not just professionally, but personally. It had reminded him that speaking truth, being vulnerable, and allowing oneself to be seen could lead to unexpected understanding and growth. Even in moments of doubt, he carried the memory of that night. When projects felt overwhelming, when colleagues seemed dismissive, he remembered the boss's words, that effort, honesty, and courage mattered, even when not immediately recognized. That understanding gave him strength. He also began to notice how his confidence affected others. Colleagues approached him with questions and ideas, and he responded with guidance and collaboration. He became someone people trusted, someone who could offer support without being overbearing, someone who had quietly earned a place of respect. Life outside work began to feel lighter too. He slept better, carried less tension in his shoulders, and found small joys in everyday moments. He realized that feeling seen and valued at work had opened the door to seeing and valuing himself in other areas of life. Weeks later, he found himself back at the gym after another long day. The sauna door loomed ahead, familiar and inviting. He hesitated, then stepped inside. The warmth enveloped him, and he smiled faintly to himself. He was alone this time, but it no longer mattered. The memory of being seen, being understood, carried with him, giving him the courage to sit in the heat and reflect, not with fear, but with understanding and self-acceptance. He thought about the long nights he had spent worrying, doubting, and hiding. And now he realized that being honest, even in moments of uncertainty, had given him a new perspective. It had taught him that recognition was not always immediate or loud, but that genuine effort and honesty had a way of being acknowledged over time. The sauna became a quiet place of reflection, a private space where he could gather his thoughts, release tension, and remember that his voice mattered. And even though the boss would not always be there to listen, he knew the lesson had been learned. Being seen, being honest, and believing in his own value could change everything. He left the sauna that night with a sense of calm purpose. He didn't know what the future would hold, whether every effort would be noticed, or whether life would always be fair. But he knew one thing with certainty: he mattered. His work mattered. His voice mattered. And that knowledge, quiet as it was, would guide him in the days, months, years to come. For the first time in a long while, he felt whole. Not because everything had changed around him, but because something had changed inside him. And that, he realized, was more powerful than anything else. Months had passed since that unforgettable night in the sauna, yet the memory remained vivid in his mind. It had started as a quiet lesson, almost accidental, but its impact on him had been profound and lasting. Every time he entered the office, every time he faced a challenging project, every time he interacted with colleagues, he carried a newfound sense of confidence and awareness that he had never experienced before. The first real change, he noticed, was in his own perception of himself. Before, he had measured his worth by how others treated him, by the attention or recognition he received. But now, he realized that value was not defined externally. It was the effort he put in, the honesty he embraced, and the courage he demonstrated in small moments that truly mattered. This understanding gave him a quiet, unwavering confidence that could not be shaken by passing opinions or temporary setbacks. He continued to work diligently, as he always had, but with a different mindset. Tasks that once felt tedious or discouraging now had purpose beyond simple completion. Every decision, every solution, every initiative he took was done with intent and awareness. He stopped overthinking how others would perceive him and focused on what he could control: his actions, his integrity, and his commitment. One day, a significant project arrived on his desk. It was complex, requiring collaboration across several departments, and many had already hesitated to take the lead. He felt the familiar nervous flutter in his stomach, the self-doubt that occasionally resurfaced. But he took a deep breath and approached it with calm determination. This time, he didn't hesitate. He made a plan, reached out to colleagues for input, and organized the steps methodically. He spoke clearly, respectfully, and with authority. For the first time, he realized that he didn't need to wait for permission to step up. He could simply act, and that was enough. His colleagues began to notice the change in him. They responded to his initiatives with cooperation and appreciation, no longer underestimating his capabilities. The office dynamic slowly shifted. He was no longer invisible. He didn't demand recognition, but it naturally followed because of the respect and confidence he exuded. His interactions became smoother, more genuine, surprisingly enjoyable. He also noticed a change in how he dealt with challenges and criticism. Before, a single negative comment could undermine his entire day, leaving him anxious and uncertain. Now he listened, considered the feedback, and acted thoughtfully without internalizing it as a judgment of his worth. He realized that criticism could be a tool for growth rather than a reflection of failure. The shift in mindset allowed him to respond to challenges calmly, strategically, and creatively. Outside work. Side work. He began applying the same principles. Relationships with friends, family, and even casual acquaintances improved. He listened more deeply, spoke more honestly, and trusted himself to navigate social situations without fear or hesitation. Simple interactions became meaningful moments because he no longer carried the constant burden of self-doubt. The memory of the sauna remained a quiet, guiding presence in his mind. He often reflected on that night, the honesty, the courage, the unexpected connection with the boss. It reminded him that vulnerability was not weakness, but strength. That being seen and understood, even in small ways, could transform a person's outlook. The lesson lingered, shaping his actions in ways that were subtle but profound. One afternoon, he found himself again in the office gym. The sauna door stood before him, familiar and almost inviting. Though he had no intention of stepping inside to speak to anyone else, he opened it slightly, just enough to let the warmth brush against him, and felt a wave of calm wash over him. The room was empty, yet he didn't feel alone. The memory of being seen, of being heard, gave him a sense of companionship that transcended physical presence. He sat on the bench for a while, letting the heat envelop him and reflecting on how much had changed. The projects he managed, the relationships he nurtured, the confidence he carried, all of it traced back to that single night of honesty. He realized that life didn't always provide guidance or recognition, but it did offer moments where courage and integrity could alter the course of things. Those moments, he now understood, were worth cherishing and remembering. Later, back at his desk, he received an email from a colleague praising his work on a recent project. In the past, he would have brushed it off, feeling uncomfortable with praise or worrying it was temporary. But now, he accepted it with gratitude, quietly acknowledging the effort he had invested and the growth he had achieved. Recognition was no longer a measure of his worth. It was simply a reflection of the work he had done well. Months turned into a year, and the changes persisted. His professional life continued to flourish, but more importantly, his personal sense of self-worth solidified. He no longer feared being overlooked or undervalued. He understood that visibility and acknowledgement were not the ultimate indicators of his significance. What mattered was consistency, honesty, and the courage to act according to his values. He also began to mentor others quietly, sharing insights without imposing authority. He helped colleagues navigate difficult situations, provided guidance, and offered encouragement. Always remembering the quiet power of being truly seen and heard. In doing so, he found fulfillment in lifting others. A reflection of the support he had received that night in the sauna. Looking back, he realized how a single encounter had redirected his life's trajectory. It had been unexpected, even accidental, yet it provided clarity and courage that would influence every decision, every relationship, and every challenge he faced thereafter. The sauna had been more than a room. It had been a space of transformation, a catalyst for change that extended far beyond its wooden walls. As he continued his journey, he carried the lesson forward: honesty. Courage and authenticity were powerful forces. Being seen and valued began within oneself, and when embraced, it could ripple outward, affecting not only personal growth but the lives of those around him. He understood that this was not a one-time moment, but an ongoing process, a commitment to live fully, speak truthfully, and act with integrity. Years later, he would still think of that night often. The warmth, the quiet, the unexpected conversation, it all remained a touchstone. A reminder that moments of courage and honesty could reshape life in profound ways. He knew that challenges would continue, that recognition might not always come, and that doubts would return. But he was no longer afraid. He had learned that being seen, believing in oneself, and acting with authenticity could withstand the tests of time, and so he continued, carrying the lessons of the sauna into every part of his life. He lived with quiet confidence, treated others with respect and empathy, embraced his work and relationships with purpose. He had discovered a fundamental truth: the courage to be honest, the ability to be seen, the commitment to act with integrity could transform not only a career, but a life. And that knowledge, once discovered, was impossible to forget.